Hi everyone, welcome to another Reasons and Resources episode. So in this episode I'm looking at reasons and resources for getting into Kotlin. And we'll be looking at some of the online stuff that you can investigate and hopefully will motivate you to explore the language. So as I do in all of these episodes, at the start I'll just go through sort of my reasons for learning the language, and then try and intermingle them with the sort of reasons why generally you might want to learn the language. So I'll include some links to Wikipedia articles as well to make that sort of those choices, or if you're deciding whether or not to take the plunge with Kotlin, it sort of help you decide whether it's the application for you, programming language for you. So I suppose there's three probably incentives for me to look at Kotlin, because I haven't properly explored the language. There's stuff I've looked at as a result of my programming polyglot project that I did, but I've not really done what I call coding in anger. That's where you've actually got a particular project you're going to work for, and you're going to build something around using the language. So I haven't got that far yet. So that's still on the cards. And my reason for being interested, well, firstly, it's a language, as it says here, that runs on the JVM, and I've dabbled a little bit with Java, which is also, not surprisingly, giveaway in the name. It's on the JVM, on the Java virtual machine. It would be pretty silly if it wasn't. And I've also dabbled with Closure, which is on the JVM. And I think, Scala's on the JVM as well, isn't it? Let me just double check. Yeah, let's go for the sand. Scala and Groovy, that was another one as well. So dabbled a bit with Java back in the early days, I suppose. Recently played around with Scala, which has both object-oriented and functional programming features in it. Very interesting. I keep meaning to take a look at Groovy, and I have dabbled with Closure as well, but only dabbled. Haven't done any sort of in production work for any of that stuff, just personal projects. So if we go back to where we were, cross-platform, statically typed, general purpose, high-level programming language with type inference. So another reason for me wanting to learn about Kotlin is it's featured in a book I keep going on about, which is called, I think, Programming Language Explorations, and it's one of the languages featured in there, so that's reignited my interest. And thirdly, I've always been curious about learning a language that's used for app development. And although I believe Kotlin didn't start out with that intention, I don't think that's the original idea with it. I could be wrong there, but it did go on to be popular as a preferred language for Android app developers at Google, because they were using it, and then they started using it for Android development. Designed by JetBrains, developed by JetBrains. Now, why, beyond what I've said in terms of my impetus for one final thing, actually, I just thought of it before I was doing the episode. It made me think about I've never developed any apps, but I don't know if anybody watching this video is long enough in the tooth to remember. There was a period when feature phones were all the thing, before we had modern smartphones, and as we sort of moved over, before smartphones really came in, I don't know if anybody remembers being able to access websites on their feature phones, but it was through was it a protocol called WAP? W-A-P? Was it Wireless Application Protocol? Something like that. And I can remember taking a hobby website I was working on at the time with a friend to do I think it was about bands. and that we were both into at the time. And I can remember converting it just for a challenge to run on under this protocol, so I could actually go onto my mobile with a little tiny screen and actually access the information that I had up there. So it was quite interesting trying to do other things on there as well. Some sites did have like a implementation in that with that protocol as well. There was a few weather websites and things like that as well. But yeah, it was pretty painful trying to browse it. And of course, it would eat up your call time or whatever. So yeah, that's the only thing I could think of. I've not dabbled with iOS apps or anything like that. So yeah, another excuse to learn Kotlin is to revisit apps. So going back to the JVM thing, of course, one of the reasons put forward for learning Kotlin alongside other JVM things is, it's fully interoperable with Java. So, you can leverage stuff on the JVM. And that's interesting once you start playing around with different virtual machines, like on the Beam, for instance. If you learn Erlang, that's there is interoperability on the Beam with other Beam languages. So you get the same thing in Java and Kotlin and Clojure being on the JVM. If you look at the syntax of the language, one thing I suppose I've started to notice is it's pretty concise to look at. It looks pretty straightforward. If you've programmed in other languages, you can see a lot of the structures look very similar. Even though some of the terminology keywords might be different, the basic sort of structure, you can see commonalities there in this. So yeah, so succinct, concise, but also has commonalities with other languages you may be familiar with. There's a whole thing to do with what's called null safety, which I need to properly explore, and I did hear it come up on an episode of a podcast, which I think I'm going to reference at the end here. So yeah, there's quite a lot of problems once you start to really get in deep in certain programmings to do with null pointer exceptions and how you deal with problems with null pointers. So it has null safety features which sort of help out with that. And you've got other things in here like asynchronous programming, those sort of things. So a lot of modern language features, because if you look at the date it came out, relatively speaking, when you compare it to other languages, it's quite far along the programming timeline. So 2011 first appeared 13 years ago. That's the current stable release as well. And, because it's used a lot on Android by Google, then there's a lot of popularity. And I think I might have pointed this out in previous episodes. It's quite interesting because when that happens, you get both, the original designers have a lot of content that they produce. But then when you've got another commercial organisation, a large one, that also develops heavily in it, then they've got their own strands of content and various other resources that you can leverage. So that's always really interesting. We'll look at some of the online books. I don't know if I'm going to specifically reference an in-paper book, but we'll see where we go with this as we go through. So let's just move on. Yep. So you might get into it, like I said, because of how it's used, what sort of applications it's used, what sort of organisations use it. Maybe there's a particular organisation you have desires to work for. So obviously it makes sense to learn one of the languages that they use a lot at the firm. As always, I like to look at the stats on the most recent Stack Overflow survey. So we got the program scripting and markup languages, the most popular technologies. Let's see where Kotlin is on here. I think it's here, yeah. So between Rust and Lua. and sort of under the group of what I suppose I think of as the usual suspects. Admired and decide, this funny, well, I say funny, this interesting graph that I always get round the wrong way. So this is the desired value, 12.3%, and this is the admired value, 60.9%. Yeah. Which programming, scripting, and markup languages have you done extensive development over the past year, and which do you want to work with over the next year? If you both work with the language and want to continue to do so, please check both boxes in that row. So that's the question that was posed in terms of where they get the stats came from in the survey. So you can see there's quite a big gap there. And then finally, top paying technologies. So where's Kotlin? Oh, there it is. It's quite low down. Maybe there's a lot of Kotlin programmers out there. Yep. So well over halfway down the list. Now, resources. Okay, so ton of stuff. So I suppose, my first point of call would be the JetBrains website. So we've got the main site, and as always, I know I say this every time, but it's worth reiterating if you've never watched these videos before. I'll include links, all the links for what I'm talking through here. Yeah, we got the docs. So you can actually understand how to use it. Take a tour through the language. We've also got one of these handy, what do you call them? So sandboxes, play area where you can kick the tires on the language. I mean, there's multiple ways you can do this now. A lot of the websites that are connected with languages have a play area, like a sandbox you can mess around with. I know there's several online compiler resources out there as well that you can use for that sort of stuff if you want to. Obviously, you can get involved in the community, so there's some links there about if you want to sort of look through all the community resources. There's a nice toolkit on here about, if you were trying to teach programming in Kotlin, there's a toolkit for that, and I find those sort of learning resources really useful, the sort of materials that you use to teach someone else. Very powerful indeed, as a source in their own right of learning. And then we've got various Kotlin courses around the world. So that's why I've not done specifically any or many standalone courses outside of this, because there's just so many links through here to stuff. So yeah. Amazing resource actually. And then, oh yeah, that's right, I was just going to go use this as the book source. That's, yeah, it's coming back to me now. So yeah, this is a pretty famous book, Kotlin in Action. And where's the other one? Is it, I was hearing mentioned, I think I've heard this mentioned quite a bit, Head First Kotlin. Yeah. So, but I always got the impression from what I've listened to in videos and various, this I think is if I'm correct if I'm wrong, I think this is the go-to book for Kotlin. I believe this one's a little bit harder, so it's not, I think you wouldn't want to read this book first. These are always very good, these pragmatic programmer books as well. I find them really good. But yeah, so stuff to explore. And you can see several of these are written by advocates, and specifically at JetBrains. And I've heard this one mentioned as well. And you can look up more over here. In terms of the sort of, videos that you might want to check out on YouTube. So we've got a little bit of a video here, 21 minutes, around how JetBrains created what ended up as Google's preferred Android programming language. We've got the actual Kotlin by JetBrains main website, so I've got a link to that for the videos there. So they've got a heavy presence on YouTube. There's 446 videos. There's a go-to conference recording, functional programming with Kotlin, and then beyond the successes of Kotlin. So there's a documentary as well on the Anywhere Club website. And we also have Talking Kotlin, which is also on the main resource that looks like it's hosted through or done through JetBrains and open source contributors. So yeah, if you want to check out podcast. Also, and you can go to this through a podcatcher as well, Developer Voices you can access through most of the streaming services. And this is a really interesting episode about, is Kotlin the language for all platforms? Interview with James Ward. That was really interesting. I found that episode. Also, there is a online book called Kotlin. I never know quite how you say it, actually. Kotlin, an illustrated guide. I'm assuming it's Kotlin. Yeah, so there's that, and of course you can. So if you don't want to stump up for a book, yep, there is an online illustrated guide. If you like that sort of style of learning, very handy. What else we got? So yeah, it's on exorcism as well. If you're a exorcism advocate and you like to do that, it's got the usual exercises to do, like Hello World and where is it? Oh, it's D&D character ones. Does it have the Hamming? Yeah, there's the Hamming one, and protein translation, RN transcription, the usual suspects of functions to try and create, and then it'll test them for you. There's 89 practice exercises on there. And then also on Code Academy there is a Learn Kotlin, a free course on there as well. So yeah, plenty to think about. Hopefully that was helpful if you're looking for reasons and resources to get into Kotlin. Thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in a future video.